Texas is closing legal loopholes thanks to a Texas native. The Summer Willis Act, signed by Governor Abbott, transforms how sexual assault cases are prosecuted by defining what consent is in the state of Texas. Willis says she was assaulted after accepting a drink at a frat party. She said she only remembers falling down while heading home. Due to legal loopholes, it would not be considered rape, all because she voluntarily accepted a drink. I spoke with Summer Willis about her journey from survivor to advocate.
Yeah, a it's a 10 decade story, but I'll start from the beginning. I grew up in Beaumont, Texas, and UT was the dream. My great grandmother went there. So did my grandmother, my grandfather, everyone went to UT. And I had a dream of becoming a writer. And so I was an English major there. um, I was one of those people that would say that literally my favorite part of college was school and like going to classes. I just loved learning, loved listening to my professors. UT is great, but in October of my sophomore year, I went to a fraternity party and everything really changed in my life. I was handed a drink by a friend of mine, which I voluntarily took, and the world started spinning, started blurring. I stopped remembering almost everything except running to my house and falling down so hard and looking at my hands and my knees and seeing that they were bloodied but not being able to feel it. So should have realized something was wrong but didn't. And then someone helped me up, and that ended up being the person who raped me. Um I don't remember the worst thing that ever happened to me, but when I woke up the next morning naked and confused and I asked, uh, he told me laughing that I kept on saying no, that I kept on trying to push him off, and just laughed it off. And then a couple of days later, wrote about it in the fraternity newsletter that went out to every single member. So as a 19-year-old girl, I couldn't imagine something worse. It felt like it took away the future that I imagined, a future where I was happy, where I could be married or had kids or have friends. Like, this became a secret that I didn't want anyone to know. And so I just shut myself off away from the world, stopped going to classes, stopped going outside. um yeah, it just became a shell of myself for a long time, and it took me a year and a half to go and see a therapist to share my story for the first time. Now we're going to fast forward almost 8 years to where, actually, I joined the Peace Corps. I did Teach for America. I started realizing by doing good, I started to feel happy again, but there was still that invisible shadow of the trauma that I just tried to bury away. And it wasn't until a long time had passed and I had these two beautiful boys that I looked under their faces and I said, I want to be the woman I used to believe I could be, someone who was strong and who was resilient and who did good. I wanted them to have that woman that I used to be able to believe that I could be. And so that night before bed, I read about a woman who lost her father to pancreatic cancer and ran 52 marathons in 52 weeks to raise $1 million in a year, and spread awareness, raise awareness about pancreatic cancer. So I woke up the next morning, 4 months postpartum, not able to run a marathon or a mile, and said, I'm going to run 29 marathons when I turn 29. And this is going to be my way of proving or learning how to be strong and resilient. I also shared my story for the first time on the 4th of July leading up to that. And the responses I got stunned me. They said that it happened to them too, that I was brave, that I was strong, and I felt really loved and seen. And that's kind of how the rest of the year went. Whenever I was running, whenever I was at the playground recovering with my boys, I would share my story. And I met so many survivors that had basically the same story as me, or heard how someone's mom being a survivor affected their childhood or grandmother, that when I ended my 29 challenge the next October, I knew I wanted to do something. And I'm from Texas, went to school in Texas. My rape happened in Texas. So I reached out to the Texas Association Against Sexual Assault and asked them, like, hey, our session's coming up. How can I help? And I told them my story. And that's when I discovered that my rape wasn't even considered a rape in Texas because of the lack of definition of consent. There were so many loopholes, and mine was just one because I voluntarily took a drink and someone else took advantage of that. No prosecutor could have taken up my case. And so I wanted to do something about it. And so, because the 29 marathons got so much attention, I started brainstorming ways to get attention for this bill. And I brainstormed a huge list of possibilities. But the one that disturbed me the most and that I felt the most was crawling, because that was what the 10 years had felt like since the rape, crawling to tell my story for the first time, to get justice, to be in a healthy relationship, um, to hear other survivor stories, to go to a rape treatment center and see what a rape kit test looks like. All of those things are a crawl. And I knew when I started telling people I was crawling a marathon for this bill, that they got it, because survivors would just start crawling because they felt it in their bones too. So that was in February. And I invited different representatives, different politicians to come out with me. And it was Ann Johnson who ended up naming the bill after me, Donna Howard, the representative sponsor, Congressman Lloyd Doggett came out, and Rep Goodwin. And we had a press conference, and that was the first time I really saw that these leaders came out to stand with a complete stranger, and they were promising survivors that they were going to fight for us. And they did. And that's when they told me they would like to honor me with this bill being named after me. And that was a such an honor, but also a weight, because there are 8.5 million survivors in Texas that we were going to have to fight for and do the impossible for. And yeah, that's the beginning.
Well, I that's an amazing 10 years. What, the Peace Corps too? You just threw that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband and I met as Peace Corps volunteers in Mexico.
Oh, that's
Very
amazing.
romantic.
Oh, so romantic. Oh my gosh, I love it. So you were just kind of mentioning this a little bit, but what was it like seeing your name attached to a bill, not only knowing that your name was going to be attached to it, but also seeing your name attached to a bill that overwhelmingly ended up passing and is now going to be law in the state of Texas?
Yeah, well, I don't think people thought it was going to pass. A lot of people that knew way more than me called it impossible. And I didn't realize how impossible it was until I heard we're literally the third state in the United States that has a rule specifically about intoxication. Like, I didn't realize how hard it was, because it was just obvious to me, like, my rape should count and so should so many others. Um, but it was, as I said, an honor, but also a weight, because I didn't want to fail survivors. And so I fought so hard, and it felt like a movie. It was about 2 weeks before a session ended, and we got Virginia Giuffre's family, who is the survivor I really looked up to, and Miss Texas and Lavinia Masters, and we got all of these people together for a press conference, one last Hail Mary, and that's when the press started paying attention and people started paying attention, and then Katie Couric and Christy Turlington and Monica Lewinsky started sharing our story, and I literally called into the office that would get to decide in the Senate if our bill would be heard by the Senate for the first time in basically 10 years. And they were like, people will not stop calling about this bill. So it felt really beautiful to see, yes, this bill has my name, but we're coming together as a community to fight for this. And that was, I have goosebumps thinking about it. And so it wasn't until the very last day and the very last hour that the Summer Willis Act actually got voted on and passed unanimously. So yeah, the whole team of us who had been really working together are just in tears, crying, and yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I have goosebumps too. That's incredible. So whenever you went to that resource in Texas and you talked about your story and how you could help, what was it like whenever you found out that your case wasn't prosecutable under these old laws? And how that did that affect your story and your sense of justice, honestly?
Yeah, I think I got angry uh, that the worst thing that ever happened to me, that was such an injustice, didn't count. And I had heard that story so many times. I just had to do something about it. But I didn't know ordinary people could be advocates. I didn't realize I could go testify and share my story, that my voice mattered at all. And there was power in that, realizing that any of us could make a difference and that any of us, if there's an issue, could stand up and get a community together. That yeah, I found my power in endurance sports, and I think I learned how to persevere and be on. I did a 105 miler to get to my my goal of 29 in a year, but it's just like occasionally you do just want to lay down and give up, and you're hurting so bad. But through that, I learned that all of these obstacles we did face in the Texas session, I was able to overcome that too. And it's just the willpower and the resilience. It's something I believe that all survivors have because we have to.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you hope that this law will signal to survivors not only across Texas, but across the country?
Yeah, well, my favorite story so far that I've heard was from one of my interns, and she told her grandmother about the bill passing, and her grandmother just started sobbing because for the first time in her life, she felt like she could tell her family what happened to her. And it was a very similar story to mine. But she won't get justice from this bill, and neither will I. But I think it gives survivors hope that we got this victory and that there's hope for change. And so I think that's the purest example of what this bill passing gives to survivors. I have also been reached out um, from people all over the country asking how they can bring this bill or something similar to their state. And so I think seeing that Texas led this and that if we can do this in Texas, we can do this anywhere. And I'm hoping to help them through my nonprofit, Strength Through Strides.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you about that. Tell me about what inspired you to create that, what you guys do, what you guys did, and what you're going to be doing moving forward.
Yeah, so my I never imagined starting a nonprofit, but when I started hearing these stories from all over the country, I wanted to do something to help them. And so I started Strength Through Strides, which I imagined as a reframing of the narrative around sexual assault. And so I wanted to give survivors stories of strength, of resilience, of hope. And so right now we're in production for a short film with one of my favorite directors, Hisco Holsing. Monica Lewinsky has come on as an executive producer. So really excited to tour that film to different universities across the country as a way to like open dialogue out. We wanted community for survivors because that's something I found running the 29 marathons. And so we're starting a 5K series that will be in 5 cities during Sexual Assault Awareness Month this upcoming April. And one is in Austin. So just giving survivors a place to see that they're not alone, that they're with a community. And then we're also working on bipartisan legislation, both on the state and the federal level, and have a huge bill coming out federally in September. So, yeah, lots of stuff.
Yeah, that's so exciting. I love that you're doing a short film for universities. I was on SMU Film at my school, SMU, and we did Take Back the Night. So we that was like one of our big movements was for stuff like this. So that would be wonderful. I hope that they get a hold of it now that I'm not there anymore.
Yeah, hopefully. Were you in AKIO?
No, I wasn't, but I knew some people who were, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know they invited me to come speak, and I know their philanthropy
Oh,
is with
yes, it is. They're with
yeah, domestic
Genesis.
violence, and they're doing a
Yeah.
Take Back the Night at UT. So
Oh, that's so great. Yes, they are. Yeah, they do. Genesis is like a women's shelter in Dallas. They work a lot with them. I forgot about that. You know more than me. Okay, so tell me a little bit about why it was important to clarify the law around intoxication and consent, and how involved were you in drafting this bill and doing all of those legislative behind the scenes things like lobbying?
yeah, sorry, what was your first question? You asked two.
Yeah, so basically it kind of goes along with it. Like, why was it important for you to clarify the legislative
Yes.
language?
So before this bill passed, we had no definition of what consent was. And so it was just a long, long list of what consent is not. So unless your case fell under one of those really specific examples, prosecutors would say, I can't take your case. And so your rape had to be so specific to what rape is not. And so one example a prosecutor gave was the fear response of flight, fight, or freeze. So there's two coworkers in a room, and one coworker woke up and her this man was inside of her, and she froze. She didn't scream, she didn't fight, but 3 days later, she went and told the prosecutor that I was raped, and they couldn't do anything because there is no, that wasn't one of the specific examples, even though it's a natural fear response. Same with the intoxication piece. And so by defining what consent is, it gives prosecutors a tool in their toolbox to be able to say, hey, like we can take your case. And that's really important. And I know some people are like, oh, this makes it easier to wrongfully convict people or make this easier for whatever. And it's like, no, it just gives them an opportunity to say yes to take a case. You still have to go through due process and all of that. So that was really important. I did not draft the bill. This bill has been trying to get passed since I was raped, basically. It's gone session after session, being ignored or not taken up by the Senate. So I think what made the difference in us getting this bill passed is having a name, not necessarily my name, but any name, because once people understood that there was a story behind this, and not just one, but so many, it humanized the bill and it made people understand the importance of that. They started seeing themselves or their daughters or their granddaughters or grandsons or sons and said, like, okay, this is something we want to fight for. This is someone we want to fight for. And so I think by humanizing the bill, and having these stories that really got it to Senate and pass the finish line. And I think only 6% of bills actually get passed. And so it was a huge victory.
Yeah, just putting a story and a face to it. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you know the importance of stories. I so yeah, I think that helped.
Yeah, it definitely did. And so lastly, just what key parts of the act do you think are going to make the biggest difference for survivors across Texas?
Well, I was talking to Representative Donna Howard's chief of staff, and she was saying, we're so happy that people like you, Sydney, are sharing this story because there's so many laws. Like, I didn't know my rape wasn't rape, but there's so many laws that we don't know about, so that people care enough to be sharing this, not only all around Texas, but all over the country, is going to help survivors actually go forward with their stories and realize, hey, I was I was literally unconscious. That was rape. And so I think just that this story is spreading could be the most powerful part of it. But also, when survivors go and tell prosecutors their story, prosecutors will be able to say, like, I can help you now regardless of your story. This counts. Whether you froze, whether you voluntarily took a drink, whether one person drugged your drink and another person took advantage of it. So we closed so many loopholes by finally just defining consent. And it's something that Texas now gets to lead, and I hope other places follow.
Wow, that's amazing. I have goosebumps. I've just like stories like this are why I love doing this job. I think that those are all the questions I have, unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
Literally, thank you for doing this story. I didn't realize how much like media attention was going to do until Howard's office sent me that message, and it's like, this is really great for people to come forward.